everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Powerful Stuff. And this week, I am going to help you learn how to own, and share your story. So as I've been telling you in past episodes, the last few weeks, we've kind of been tracking the Upgrade group coaching program that I run and the modules that we do in each session of the Upgrade. And because we had just finished on the cycle of transformation, which I did with y'all this last week as well, transforming old patterns and old beliefs into new empowered beliefs and how we take action from there. The week that comes after that is owning our story. So yes, we had old patterns that we were operating from in earlier parts of our life as soon as last week or an hour ago, right? But the owning your story part is not being ashamed of like those elements of yourself or those past patterns, and learning how to reclaim your narrative and how you speak about things in your life, because our word is our wand. As I was talking last week about Florence Chauvel, who was like the OG manifestation, your word is your wand. Be careful what you speak, because you kind of control your energy, and your energy and how you speak about things ends up being your reality. So all of that's to say, guys, we are going to own our story today. And I freaking love this topic because little known fact that you guys might not know about me is that I was a college essay coach for many years in my 20s as I was founding my beverage company. So I loved helping high school students take some of the things that they struggled with in high school and turning it into a kick-ass college essay, if I do say so myself. And of course, this storytelling component has also been ingrained in me as an international journalist in my early 20s, traveling to different countries and finding common ground through learning people's stories. And now as a coach, helping people tell an empowered narrative about where they've been, where they are, and where they're going. And so it's not just about like the triumphs, right? It's also about the tribulations. And I truly believe, and not just like the, pronounced like stark struggles that we've gone through, but like the forms of like procrastination or negative self-talk or imposter syndrome that we've had throughout the years that might be more subtle. How can we own where we are today, why that showed up, and what we're alchemizing it into now, if that makes sense. And so in our Own Your Story podcast, I want to give you guys a few examples of like a negative and positive framing of different stories using examples from the life of yours truly. So a negative story that I would tell about my love life back in the day before I met my husband, Spencer, I would always date these guys that were emotionally unavailable, usually foreign, and, it would be like hot and heavy, and they'd be like, I can't believe I found someone like you. Where have you been all my life? And then they would like love bomb me, and then they would disappear, and then I would get to tell all of my friends, oh my gosh, like what an asshole, right? And like bond about like what dicks these guys were. So that's kind of a disempowered narrative. And the more I kept being like, why me? Why does this always happen to me? The more it kept happening to me, kind of like, speaking it into existence and then subconsciously believing that that's what I deserved, right? And so when I would talk about it, I'd be like, yeah, it usually always ends up like this. The LA dating pool sucks. Like, kind of like a little negative Nancy, a little neg Nance. And when I reclaimed that narrative, so to speak, I found a more empowered way to talk about it, especially like with like an ex-boyfriend who had cheated on me and all of this stuff, rather than like, again, the why does this always happen to me, to those things were really difficult. And through these experiences of being cheated on and being in situations where I didn't feel valued, the most important thing it left me with was a curiosity about what in myself did I need to heal because I was allowing myself to remain in these situations. And what it did was it awoken me to my need of healing my love with myself, healing my relationship with myself. And so being cheated on and being in these relationships ultimately led me into a journey of self-love, especially like when I embarked on the world of mindfulness and did my first plant medicine ceremony when I was 24. That gave me a huge revelation about my self-love, of, if I can surrender to myself and can love myself unconditionally, then I won't settle for less than someone else. And so all of these situations happened for me to go on that journey, which not only was a beautiful journey to go on a personal level, but I became so passionate about it and passionate about helping other people wake up to their worth and the love that they desired, to, have a whole coaching practice based around it, and to have led many workshops in helping people become what they're ready to attract and to, be who they're ready to date and wake up to their worth. And so all of these situations that I was in, though it was painful, and though I was in these cycles of not feeling enough and thus attracting partners that helped reinforce that, it was all part of my journey when I retroactively look back to see that I was ready to share these steps of learning how to love and value oneself with the world. So that's owning that story, guys. And then if we want to get even more specific, so like if you're really in the trenches about owning a part of your story, and maybe you still have like a sting around a certain person who did a certain something to you, I always like to also zoom out and look at like the 20 years down the line effect. And I actually gave this example in the upgrade this week. So as I mentioned, I had an ex-boyfriend that cheated on me with his other ex-girlfriend, actually, and who didn't know me at the time. And though it was like super painful, and at the time I thought he was the love of my life, what ended up happening was a year and a half later, I became friends with this girl. And not only did we become friends, rewind. He cheated on me. He's from England. I decided, you know what? I'm going to have my own British experience instead. And this is like very dramatic of me, but, and I also wanted to get my master's, but I'm like, I'm going to apply to Oxford and I'm going to have my own master's experience after we broke up and things ended with this guy because we were dating in Boston. And I got into Oxford. And I feel like that breakup really nudged me to apply and to go. And then when I was there, I met his other ex-girlfriend, who's also vegan, brunette, singer, and we hit it off. We became friends. We traveled Europe together, booked our own European tour of like over 15 cities performing, from like Radio Luxembourg to Tallinn to Norway, Estonia, Lithuania. It was crazy in the most amazing way. We ended up doing the Dublin Marathon together. She visited me in LA when I moved here and gave me my first tarot deck. We just released our song Alchemy together. And none of that would have happened without dating this guy. So was it painful? And do I like kind of look back and feel compassion? But, and like, oh my gosh, younger Meredith, what were you thinking to stay in something that was so clearly like not making you feel good? Of course I have those thoughts time to time, but would I take it back? No, because it gave me that friendship. And not only that, but it gave me the friendship of other women who I met through him, who ended up going through my coaching program as well, who then I've met other people through and they've met other people through. So it's like irreversibly not only changed the course of my life, but like other people who I've met through it too, that then I've introduced to other people. So it's been this like cool butterfly effect. So that's kind of a very specific personal way you can internally own your story when you're kind of struggling with, maybe something feeling still quite fresh around a certain like person or situation of like, in 20 years, there's going to be this irreversible domino effect that just had to happen that way, or else it wouldn't have played out the way it did. And the other own your story that I like to talk about is on a professional sense, to give y'all an idea, is kind of how I thought of myself in my 20s. I went to like high achieving schools, like Harvard and Oxford, and took a non-traditional path after graduating. A lot of my classmates went on to like found their own companies or be in tech or consulting. And then I taught yoga for a year around London and played guitar and, sometimes was like, am I making the wrong choice? This is a gap in my LinkedIn. And then I also eventually became a founder of a beverage company. And I think if I'm being honest with myself, was like, oh, cool. Now I kind of have like a founder title that some of my classmates have. And of course I founded the company because I liked the product, but there was a little bit of that there, right? And then when I shut my company down because it wasn't aligned and I had to be honest with myself that like my joy was like the branding and the community that the company provided, but not the actual product, that aspect of it that I really loved. Part of me was like, oh, this founder identity is going away. And I like kind of struggled with that for a little bit, but I eventually like was like, what, my happiness and my alignment is too important. And then I thought about, at that time I was already kind of helping other entrepreneurs, combining my mindfulness tools and some of the executive and personal coaching workshops and trainings I had done, helping other people. And I was like, I want to start my coaching business full time once I shut this beverage company down. But then that imposter syndrome voice in me was like, who are you to think that you can coach these other entrepreneurs? You're a failed startup founder, Meredith. You are a failed startup founder. Like, who do you think you are? Like that, there was that little voice going on. And this is, again, that other example of owning my story where I could have let that get the best of me, right? I could have been like, you know what? You're right. Who am I to coach these people? I'm a failed startup founder. Internal Meredith, you caught me. Instead, I was like, you know what? I think it's actually courageous and beautiful. And of course, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have, like, after my master's, like, explored like stuff I was passionate about, like sharing yoga and mindfulness tools and sharing my creativity, my music. And I'm also proud of myself for becoming a founder in the beverage space where I had no knowledge of the beverage industry prior, or CPG, or what being a founder was like. And I threw myself into it and I learned every step of the way, and I even raised money. And then I also trusted myself and trusted my gut enough to do the very hard thing of shutting a company down and telling your investors, So I was like, actually, I feel like all of that's fucking courageous and really brave and really powerful. And how cool that I can now help other entrepreneurs through their journeys on a, spiritual, personal, and tactical level. And so the cool thing there was when I did launch my coaching business and I made a post about it, the greatest irony, of course, is that my first few clients were fellow Harvard acquaintances who I really admired and looked up to, who said, I've always admired how you go off and do your own thing. Excuse me, guys, how you go off and do your own thing, how you're always so creative. And I really want to do that for myself too. I really want to learn how to express myself more. I really want to learn how to step into my own gifts. I really want to get off the hamster wheel of like the external validation and feel internally satisfied and guide myself from that place. So what they had seen in me, or what I quote unquote thought was my greatest shame in my 20s of hopping around, of following my creative pursuits, my Harvard classmates viewed as my greatest gift, as my superpower, as the reason they'd want to work with me for coaching. And so it's just such a great reminder of like, when you own your story and you own those things as strengths, like that's actually how like you start to perceive it, and you welcome in like the truth of the other people who have perceived it that way as well. And what a beautiful gift that is. And I'll just like never forget that story, because also imagine if I had let the old story get the best of me, there would have been so many people that I've never coached or helped them tap into their own self-trust to like go after their like true passion or share their creative work publicly for the first time, or feel like they're in a deserving, authentic relationship. So these are just little examples, guys, of owning your story. So let's just get to it. Today's pretty simple, but we're going to kind of tackle it from two levels, if you will. The kind of like literal historical sense of like something that happened in your life. And then also like the patterns, the feelings, the shame, the beliefs associated with it. And why did you have to go through those things? Okay. So I want you to think of an instance in your past, and it can be the recent past. And I want you to write that instance down, I want you to pick an instance that maybe in the past you felt like ashamed of, or maybe it's even a period of time where you felt like you weren't doing a lot, or like you weren't on your path, or you look back and you kind of cringe at your behavior, or you feel remorse around that period because you feel like it set you back. So go ahead and think of that time. It can be however long or short. And then I want you to write down what that old story was that you were telling yourself around it. And write down that version of you, like who is that version of you that believes that old story? Like what energy, what aura do you see emitting from yourself when you continue in this present day to regurgitate that old story? What is the aura? Is it like heavy? Is it gooey? Is it like dark brown? Is it gray? Like just, I'm putting words in your mouth, guys. I don't know what color your aura is around that old story, but just writing it down and like, who is that version of you that keeps repeating it? And then I also want you to write down, you can pause this in between each of my little things because I'm just getting so excited to help you own your story, guys. But yeah, as I was saying, like when you tell that story in the present day, in that kind of more negative way, like how do you feel? How do you feel after? What kind of impression, if someone else was telling you that story about themselves, would that leave on you about that person? Ooh, mic drop, if someone else was like, and then this happened and then I never learned, like, or whatever it might be, like, how would that leave you feeling after that interaction? So just getting that feeling of that old story written down on the paper. And once you have it, if you can rip that old story out of the page, great. And I want you to like crumple it in a little ball and rub it together, and then rip it up. I want you to rip it up with your hands and then like stomp on it. And then imagine that you're stomping on it like you're turning it into soil, because I love a good soil and garden and full bloom moment. But turning it into soil beneath your feet, as Natasha Bedingfield would say, the rest is still unwritten. And then closing your eyes and then taking a deep breath in and then exhaling it out. And then imagining as your gaze is inward that old story has fallen to soil beneath your feet. And as you feel it as old soil beneath your feet, feeling the new spaciousness that brings, to not hold on to that old story, to not try to hide that old story, to not be ashamed of it. If you knew that it was, regardless, of how it manifests in this present day, but it was all part of your growth, now it's soil beneath your feet. How do you feel? And as you breathe into that spaciousness and this blank slate energy with that soil beneath your feet, imagine walking in this beautiful, mystical forest of possibilities of all your stories to an opening in the forest where there's a huge, beautiful metal bowl, and inside of the metal bowl you pull out a magical scroll. And as you look at this magical scroll, you see the old story re-envisioned from this 2020 view, from your present and from your future self, of why that old story had to happen exactly how it did to bring you the growth, the awareness, the connections that you have now. So just taking a moment to see in like a moving picture book that old period of time playing out, you with those patterns and beliefs, learning how to break them and shed them, how it's been part of your dharma, part of your life's purpose up into this present moment. And as you look at everything moving in this beautiful picture book, feeling this feeling of peace washing over you, feeling the perfection of this old story being transformed into a new, empowered narrative. And as you look at the scroll, asking your younger self, however younger you were, asking them what their purpose was of showing up in that way at that point in your life. Why were they doing it? What did they need to learn? Trusting whatever they say. And then telling that version of you how proud you are of them presently for doing the best they can with what they have. For being part of your growth journey. And as you give them this thanks, this gratitude, you see them transforming in front of your eyes into your highest all-knowing self, your all-knowing self that it's always within the deepest part of your soul emanating out. Your all-knowing self who knows every part of your journey from death to birth to death. And just asking your all-knowing self how to alchemize whatever the remaining shame was from this story into your superpower. How is it perfectly preparing you to be the most authentic you for yourself and those around you? Thanking them. Feeling this old story completely alchemized into this positive growth. Why it had to unfold that way. How you're harnessing it now with your new beliefs, your new actions, and how you're excited to step even more into this growth in the future. As you roll up the scroll, place the remaining magic dust from the scroll, like dusting it all over yourself, feeling it as you breathe into it, and exhaling it out. Another deep breath in. And exhale to open your eyes, returning to this space. Wow. I can't wait to hear what story came up for you as you get out your pen and write what your new chosen reframe of this story is. Why did it have to happen that way? How did you grow from it? And how are you excited to take those learnings into present and future? So go ahead and pause this, guys. And then I want you to put on Natasha Bedingfield, unwritten, and I want you to write and dance this new narrative onto your paper for the next few minutes. Go. Okay, welcome back. Maybe you wrote it down. Maybe you spoke it out. I'm sure it was powerful. And as you look at that, I want you to say it with power. And anything else that might have been shameful at one part of your life, going through this exercise with these other parts of your life now and repeating those steps of like, what was the old story? How did it make me feel when I was telling it? How would I feel if someone else was telling me this old version in this disempowered way? And then converting that to soil. And then what is my new story that I'm telling around it? How is that empowered and serve me and my goals and my beliefs and what I'm ready to step into right now? And how might that even be more authentic for other people? How might that be more inspiring for other people to hear these like vulnerable sides of my story? And how might that make them feel even more of a sense of possibility? And this is really powerful, guys, because again, I cannot say it enough. Third time's a charm. You know what they say. Tell them what you're going to tell them again, and then tell them again, or something like that. It's probably more eloquent, but your word truly is your wand. And so how I speak about things recently has become so careful. Even if I'm speaking about something I'm uncertain about or like feel anxiety about, I'll say things to like remove a judgment from how I talk about it. Like I'll be like, the story that I was telling myself is this, or, while my perception at the time was this, I'm still holding the vision for like the highest outcome. And here's how I know that like later it's going to be even better than I can imagine. And as we do this, I know it sounds so simple and so stupid obvious, guys, but the more we talk about it that way, the more we actually like, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but like fake it till you make it. Like we have more energy around it. We feel more inspired by it, and our subconscious is hearing us show up for ourselves literally out loud when we're speaking about it this way. And as our energy lifts, as we're talking about it in this way, other people feel that too. And then it becomes this positive boomerang. And it's not to say like, don't ever allow yourself to feel the negative story. Get it out. Like you can vent it out, but have it in that safe container of like, I'm going to get it out on paper. I'm going to give myself compassion for it. And then I'm going to reframe it, right? You don't necessarily just have to hop right to the reframe. You can get the other story out, but then it's like with the knowing in that container. Once I get it out, once I process those emotions around it, then I can move to the reframe. And actually in my group coaching program, I have everyone reframe things every week. And this is something my old executive coach, Victoria Song, shout out Victoria, she's amazing, did with me, which is a practice that I've really liked and since continued, of writing down a reframe, like something negative that happened that week, quote unquote, or our perception of negative. And then what is the reframe around it? What did I learn from it? What did I gain from it? Such a basic example, but like situation. I was stuck in traffic for 2 hours and it was so annoying and I was late to this dinner. Reframe. I used that time to listen to a podcast, which changed my mentality. I sent that podcast to 3 friends. I called a friend who actually really needed to hear from me that day while I was stuck in traffic, and it totally shifted her day. And it reminded me that I'm in control of how I spend my time, even if I'm stuck in my car on the 405. So doing those things every day, like finding a reframe every day, it's literally like going to the gym for your brain, of like choosing to see that that positive story reframe, choosing to own your story. So I have a little 7-day challenge for you guys. Like I just thought of this right now, but own your story, 7-day reframe challenge of how you're going to find something each day to reframe. And whether you speak it out loud, write it down, or do this challenge with a friend, or even better, text me or DM me about it at the Meredith Baker or at That's Powerful Stuff, and we'll do it together. And let's see what happens in 7 days when we own our story, even in these little daily bite-sized ways. Okay, guys, I hope as always that was as powerful for you as it was for me. And don't forget that own your story doesn't just have to be about things from your past being brought into your present and future, but it can be things from your present, right? If you're going through a hard time or you're going through an uncertain time, like you can be like, let's just play imaginary. How in 10 years might I be so grateful that this happened? How in 10 years might this have been the perfect pivot to lead me to this path of XYZ? How might in 10 years, this will be even more freedom and expansion than I could have imagined had I continued to go down that road, right? Just as the case with people who like lose their job and then a few months later get the job of their dreams, where it encourages them to go like start their travel blog they've always wanted to do. So know that you can also use this tool or think about it in this way for a situation you want to own right now, whether it's like going through a breakup or a transition professionally or something that you're just in uncertainty around. What is the own your story narrative? You know, I always like to say, like, there's that Guy Raz podcast, How I Built This, with the CEOs of like really big companies and how did they build it. And there's always that point in the podcast where they're like, and then shit hit the fan. And I was like, where are we going to go next? And that's when we pivoted. And that's when we had our $1 billion idea. And I wouldn't be here today if shit hadn't hit the fan. And I was at rock bottom that one point in time. So that's just the idea of owning it in the present and catapulting us into the future. And I like to say a last little Meredithism for the road that'll lead you with, guys. Super eloquent. No, I'm joking. But it is catchy. And that is, shit hits the fan before we expand. I'm going to say that one more time. Shit hits the fan before we expand. So just remembering that. And when we're in chaos, not letting our words kind of like, when you are in chaos and you have like either friends who make it worse by being like, oh my gosh, yeah, you are fucked, or friends who make it better by being your cheerleader and like, you're amazing, you're going to get through this. That's literally like what our words and how do we speak to ourselves about it are. So be your own rock, be your own bestie in times like this. In times like this, hopefully this is also great times too. In times like this and in times like that. But of lifting yourself up, of owning the narrative, and not just when things are bad, right? Own your story when things are great too, of like doubling down on like, I'm fucking proud of the hard work I put in to get here. And this is an even more amazing time to own my story and double down on the gratitude and appreciation I have for myself and others in the circumstances that allowed me to be where I am today. Okay, guys. Well, keep me posted on your 7-day reframe challenge. I'm going to be doing it with you. I cannot wait. And I will see you next week for more powerful stuff. Love you guys.